Very good. Let's get started. We are ready some few minutes, and welcome everybody, and warm welcome, particularly to you, Saeed, and Jonathan. That's going to be our guests today, and our 4D conversation meeting. 4D stands for Dreamers, Doers, Designers, and Doubters. And today we have AI, but we're going to focus, Saeed and Jonathan, on the paradoxes, right? We have a note taker here, so this one is Necker, right? John, yes. Hans Erik. Sorry, some people joining now.
Fortsatte turerna kring den läckta chatten där USAs försvarsminister...
So, maybe Hans can mute yourself, or if you can mute him, Geraldo.
Eftermiddags publicerade tid.
Erik, thank you. And it's particularly the paradoxes and how to say unintended consequences, because there is, like any technology, a lot of good stuff, but especially in AI, there is a lot of worries. So with that, I would like just to leave the word to you, Peter, that will be moderating the session. And I would like really, if we have the cameras on, as much as possible. And I think, Peter, also the questions in the chat anytime, right?
Yeah. So yes, welcome everyone here. And of course, welcome Saeed and Jonathan. Thanks for joining us this evening. Usually the way we run these sessions is that our guest speakers, they will start with presenting their thoughts and ideas for somewhere between 40-45 minutes, somewhere thereabouts, and then we'll open up for questions. We are not on a super hard deadline here, so if we will utilize the time in the best way possible, of course, but you're welcome to ask questions also during the presentation, and at least you can write them down in the chat so that we can return to them after the presenters are done. Also, please note that Jonathan, unfortunately has to leave us already right before 7, if I understood it correctly, Jonathan. So let's hope we can start the Q&A before that and address any questions to Jonathan directly if there are any. Having said that, as you all see, this is recorded. We'll have to sort of like monitor the recording afterwards to see if we get confirmation from some content providers or some people responsible for the content in the presentations shown by Jonathan and Saeed here, and that they agree on that we publish this recording. And as you all know, we already have a great series of lectures behind us, and we publish them on YouTube, so feel free to revisit them as well. But having said that, please, it's you, Saeed, that starts, right? Or...
Yeah. Thanks a lot for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be in this session. And like you said, the idea is to share some ideas that with some colleagues we have developed over the past couple of years. And hopefully it provokes some discussions and interactions. I'm very much willing to hear your feedback and reactions to what I'm going to discuss, because eventually it's a topic that is controversial, it's new, and people have divergent opinions. So I hope that it can be a trigger for a good conversation. So may I share my slides now? Yep.
And for people that have not turned on the cameras, please do so if you can. It looks, it's much nicer if we can see each other.
Yep. Thanks a lot. And I use this title that Geraldo coined for us, so the progress paradox. But the main idea is that to see what can go wrong when trying to use AI in organizations. And I must clarify that we are not trying to advocate this view that AI is bad and needs to be avoided, although some people hold this viewpoint and it's respectable. But for us, it's more a nuanced perspective. So trying to understand how we can think of the long-term potential issues and challenges that we'll face and to enhance management scholarship in that direction. Something about myself, I'm an associate professor of strategic management at FU Amsterdam. Now for past 14 years, I've been studying what we call the human side of technological innovation. So the basic idea is that the technological innovation is not about technology, but it's a lot about how people develop the technologies, how they use them, and the issues related to social structures in which we are working. I strive to connect the theories to practice. So I was a practitioner basically for a rather long period of time. I was at Ericsson. The last position was senior researcher. And there I studied the new technologies such as cloud and IoT, and AI was not a thing early on, but then later on it becomes important. Some of my research has received traction by practitioners. They thought it's useful and it's recognized, and that's what I try to aspire in my work. Starting a few years back, we realized that now cloud is rather established. IoT is also kind of not emerging in that sense anymore, but AI is going to be the big topic. So we launched a few studies, both in terms of experiments and qualitative research, but also conceptual development, because it's something about future. It has not happened yet, so we cannot look into the past, but we need to think about future, and that's quite appropriate for conceptual thinking. And then I've done some work on practice side in the format of AI strategy lab is something that we are working to establish and develop. But then again, the topic of today is to share some conceptual ideas that together with some colleagues we have developed. So this is the project that we have been working on for the past couple of years together with Shaker Zara, which is a prominent scholar in various field of management, and Victor Hilsing. We try to look at the dark side of AI in organizations. So that's what we started. And the basic idea is that now everyone is investing on the AI. The governments are investing, technology firms are doing it, following the non-technology firms also trying to do that. So it's everywhere. It is mostly the discussion of how to make it more effective, so to harness the benefits of it. There is less attention to the long-term implications of what we are doing and the issues that may emerge in this regard. Now, we had some inspirations about the issues, some studies, early studies by some scholars at Harvard and other places. For example, there was a study on consultants at BCG, and they find that if they use AI, the performance of everyone increases. So the top performers become slightly better, the low performers become much better. But then the issue is that if the task goes outside the boundaries of the work, so something that is not codified in AI and it's really better done by individuals, the performance of everyone will drop. So that's the finding. The second one is was a field experiment in Kenya. So this study also shows that the performance of entrepreneurs improves the business outcomes for low performance is not the same as the high performance. So the ones who can and know how to use AI, they get better outcomes. The ones who are lower performers, they also do worse. So this shows that the gap between the high performers and low performers becomes wider. That was another anecdote. And the other observation was in our classes, so it's quite anecdotal. We let the students to use AI in the same assignments and exercises that we used to have in the past. We realized that, of course, we have much fewer low quality submissions in terms of assignments or examination, but then the thoughtful, in-depth, and interesting outcomes are also less. So we're kind of moving towards a sort of average. This inspired us to think that what could go wrong? What are the problems of the AI? Now, one of the things that came to our attention as we are thinking about this is that we are seeing AI as it is now, and it's getting better and better. So many of the issues that exist today may not exist in the next generations, including how we can get the students to use AI in a way that they can learn, how to kind of find some sort of serendipitous innovations, so not necessarily following the logical steps for innovation, but try to have more accidental innovation as well. These things are progressing with AI. Now we try to see what remains the core issue, what are the issues that it's very unlikely that AI can resolve. And among the things that we identified, now by reading the literature and talking to different experts in the field, we find that there are two factors related to emotions and social belonging that are quite important for innovation, because many of the things that we do is because we are passionate, somehow maybe overconfident, sometimes unreasonable, but we want to make something happen. And that's why we try something that is maybe not what AI would recommend us to do. And second is that we do many things because of the social context. So we take risk, we do kind of somehow innovative activities that are risky, and we wouldn't do it if we were alone. But because of the greater cause that we are part of, that we try them. So we realize that these factors are not expected to be, at least as of now, embedded in AI in near future. But then these are very important for certain type of outcomes, particularly what we refer to as breakthrough innovations. So the idea is that AI integrations in organizations can have some negative implications that I'm going to discuss in the next step. Now, one idea that there are different ways to think of the complex processes. The Goldman's bathtub or boat model is one way of thinking of these complex relationships. Now, the example that we use to understand why this model is important is the link between just an example not related to AI. The economic development in underdeveloped countries is expected to increase the stability because people become happier. So we expect that these countries, if the economy becomes better, then the overall socio-political environment also gets better. But then we see that in the lower levels of the society, people start to see that some others are getting richer, and the social comparison results into some negative impressions, and the economic development results in a revolution in that country. So the idea is that the obvious, more aggregate level effects are not necessarily the same as what happens in the lower levels of the social structure. Now, this is for the society. We try to find the same logic in the organization. So how an organization can benefit from AI directly, but then it creates some mechanisms within the individuals that is actually against the purpose of the organization. Now, we identify two factors. One is related to mindfulness. So mindfulness, I've put a kind of simple definition here, is basically about being able to recognize the patterns, try to discern that should I follow what I have been always doing, or maybe it's a different situation. So I need to act and think differently. Now, AI gives a lot of opportunities because you can use predictive models and everything to identify the patterns, to make better informed decisions. So that's good. But then if we look at the things that happen on individual levels, many of the jobs will be seriously affected by AI in a way that AI will do those jobs much better than individuals. Now, as you lose your competences, you start to follow what AI suggests to you. you gradually, incrementally lose the ability to discern if something is different. So when AI suggests something, then you think it's correct. Now, the outcome is that if there is a situation that you feel AI is suggesting something, in normal situation, you think that, but this is not the same as the past, so I should do and act differently. You will lose the inclination to act in this way. So the divergent behavior, breaking the norms, deviation from what is routine and accepted becomes less likely. And therefore, it will reduce to less innovative behavior or change in the organization. So on one hand, now this is the paradoxical effect that we refer to. Directly, it may help you to recognize the patterns, make better decisions, but indirectly, because you lose your mindfulness, you become quite reliant or dependent on AI, then it's less likely for you to overrule the AI and just follow the process that is suggested by the machine. So that's one mechanism. Second one is more social one. So like I said, many of the activities and risks that we take in our in our kind of organizational life or also in the society is because of the sense of belonging. And AI has implications on that because basically gradually you will have more colleagues that are machines. And it's for real that some organization at this point have AI machines with employee numbers, so they are being treated as some sort of employees. So if the organization becomes dehumanized, then it's less likely for you to have motivation to overrule what the machines are suggesting and doing. So you become more likely to follow whatever that machines does because basically you don't care. Now, why would I take the risk to say that we should take a different decision than what AI suggests when there is no there's no social context that we feel connected to it. So in that sense, what we refer to as social destruction creates a negative mechanisms based on which we avoid taking risks, we avoid breaking norms and rules for the greater cause, for the continuation and survival of our team or unit or organization or society in general, then it's against the purpose. But directly, it may be quite beneficial, actually, because without being dependent on the others, every individual can leverage AI. They can try new things. They can ask AI to assess their work. So in a sense, it's liberating. But at the same time, because you are not anymore in a social structure, you may not want to violate the AI suggestion. So question is, are these effects are universal? In our research, we get to this point that no, probably not, because there are jobs and competences that are enhanced with AI. There are many aspects that are still better done by the individuals, or the work can be designed in a way that we sustain those parts that are better done with the individuals, and AI becomes a help. So the question is, which professions are prone to loss of mindfulness? The second is that the social context is not doomed to be lost. So having a sort of communities of same practice, designing and finding ways that people are connected are among strategies that can help organization to sustain being connected and not living in the middle of a lot of robots and machines that are talking to each other. I'd like to finish my short talk with this, I would say, thought-provoking idea that we have this Polanyi's paradox. I believe many of you are familiar with that. So basically, we know, and we used to know much more than we can tell. So this is tacit knowledge. Many things we just know for some reason, but we cannot really explain it. With the help of AI, we are in an age that we can say much more than what we know, which seems to be a good thing, actually, right? But then the question is that if we become increasingly dependent on AI, then will we stop thinking and just rely on the machines? Now, this is the time that AI writes emails much better. Then AI also answers the emails much better if we just make this automated. There is a point that there's no point in communication anymore. It could be a good thing for many situations, but I think there should be a long-term implications as individuals outsource their thinking to AI. So that was my presentation. So do we want to have Jonathan to present first, then we have the questions, or how do we proceed?
Let's move over to Jonathan, since we have a little less time with him.
Okay.
And
Let me
then
unshare.
we can follow up on some of the questions. You can also look at the chat yourself and
Yes,
maybe
I'll do that.
prep.
I'm just trying to find the unshare. Oh, yes, I found it.
So,
Yes.
Jonathan, please,
Yes,
you can take over the screen.
With great pleasure. Let me share my screen, and then we should be good to go. Yeah. Okay, are we good?
Yes.
Perfect. Now I cannot see you anymore, unfortunately. So if there is something, then you just have to alert me by using your mic. So it's a pleasure. My name is Jonathan Shard. I'm a colleague of Saeed since about a bit more than 3 years that I joined the Vrije in Amsterdam as an associate professor in strategy and organization. Before that, I've been doing my first years as an, let's say, professional academic at King's College in London. And I graduated initially with a PhD from the University of Geneva. So I'm talking about a presentation that is pretty much about a paper that is called Managing with Artificial Intelligence. And why am I talking about it? Because I think it brings us to the root of this paradox, or this paradox of success that we're talking about, or at least to some aspects of it. Because I think that this paradox of success, it is basically rooted that we approach this topic or this phenomenon very often in a one-sided way, right? And then later on we're surprised. But looking at it in a more holistic perspective, I think that may actually help us in parts to avoid such surprises. And you will see, and I apologize to an extent that I have a rather academic presentation here, but I think it's, I hope, valuable for you that you can see how we look at this topic, this broader topic of management with AI. Then we can see also how you see it. Where do you agree? Where do you disagree? And I think this is quite fruitful. And then on the other hand, I think this is important because my point of view is that theories, they don't only describe the world, no, but they also shape the world to an extent. Obviously, they shape public discourses, they inform also consultancy work. So I thought there's merit in doing it this way around. Good. Now, I'm doing this based on a paper that is really hot off the press. It was published 2 months ago in one of our big field journals in the Academy of Management Annals with 2 colleagues of mine, or 2 co-authors of mine, and we are very proud to have gone through a process. And just to put this into perspective, such journal processes, they take around 4 years from initial submission to publication. So welcome to our world and how this works there. And why did we actually try to focus on this? Obviously, we started working on this topic before there was something like generative AI, before there was ChatGPT. So, it was a bit more of a niche topic still back then. Well, our first observation was that, throughout our entire history and also as an academic discipline, we have understood management just as something or as some organizational tasks that are reserved for humans. And then we observed that increasingly, there's a fundamental transition actually taking place with algorithms and artificial intelligence actually taking on some of these tasks. Now, a little bit of background to this, because when you bring this forward, okay, what is actually managing with AI? Inevitably, in the first place, you have to ask yourself the question, well, what is actually management? And I realized that this question is way more complex than I had actually initially seen, because very often we just associate, okay, management is something that is done by a manager. But that is really, let's say, the initial point of view where it was much more focused on formal authority, giving us basically the power to be called and to be perceived as a manager. But we see that this has also developed a lot and also includes nowadays people that have much more functional tasks inside an organization that actually contribute to what we call the attainment of organizational goals, right? So managing as such is about the attainment of organizational goals in an effective and efficient manner. And it includes a variety of tasks such as planning, organizing, leading, controlling, and deciding on scarce organizational resources, right? That is what it is. And that is one of the recent established definitions of what management actually is about. And that deviates to some extent how we think about it maybe in practice, because obviously it includes also management in organizations that are not necessarily firms. And also it includes more functional sides that are performing some of these tasks that at the end of the day contribute to the attainment of organizational goals. Then we stated, and I think sometimes a little bit forgotten, what actually AI is or how AI is different. Because obviously each time there was a new technology coming in, it changed something in the way of how we do management, right? But our argument here, and that is not only our argument, but said by several others, is actually, well, this is a bit of a different beast, if you want, right? Why is that the case? Well, because we have actually, first of all, learning that is taking place, learning that is not supervised, right? Therefore, we also have these fields that very often the underlying features of how basically an outcome is generated is not visible to us. So we have this degree of opacity. And then depending on the organization, depending on the setting, we have a varying degree of autonomy that is also prescribed to AI. So that makes it different. So at the end of the day, what is this about? So for us, it's about humans' interaction with algorithms that perform managerial tasks in organizations, right? And we were very interested in that and we looked out, and in the first step we did, okay, what did actually all our colleagues in different disciplines write about it? And we did a very large-scale, complicated search. There were more than 5,000 studies implied that we screened and narrowed it down to a sample. Long story short, we saw that actually, and here you see what we call a citation map. So to what extent are some of these fields referring to similar things or different things actually in order to make sense about this very same phenomenon, management with AI. And we saw there's actually two very different schools of thought, if you want, that have been established in that area. And I think that those different schools of thought, they explain to an extent this paradox of success that we're talking about today. Now, what are these different schools of thought, or these two different perspectives on managing with AI? Well, on the one hand, we have what has been labeled the so-called human-AI collaboration literature, right? Now, what is it about? Well, that is pretty much one group of researchers, but we can also see it resonating in public discourse. We see it in the business press, right? That focuses on AI in what we call enabling decision-making contexts, right? So managers have a certain discretion over the AI output, meaning in simple terms, you can decide whether or not you want to use it, right? So it helps you with decision-making, and those are individuals that what we call retain their agency. So that means they, at the end of the day, can decide whether or not to accept it. They engage with AI in so-called augmented settings. Maybe you have heard this term. I will explain it in a minute. And it looks at, okay, how well does AI actually help us to perform well on a task? In simple terms, it's about, okay, how do humans use AI to manage, right? And if we take a closer look, this is informed by a lot of literature, but just to, or one key literature, but just to bring you the key point across, one of the key assumptions is here from what we call the behavioral theory of the firm that comes forward with the idea, okay, how can we actually overcome human biases and our cognitive limitations by means of AI, right? And just some examples here before, what do colleagues actually look at here? They look at, for instance, here's one paper that looks at, okay, how do people in the patent offices, so in patent offices, you have to be aware that you have to make a decision whether or not something merits to be a patent, right, or not. And then you have to see to what extent is it actually new, to what extent is it actually different, and scan this with all the existing other patents and out. Obviously, in such a context, AI is a very helpful tool, and the authors also find that there are strong complementarities between human expertise and AI to at the end of the day, get to better decision outcomes. Another example here is, for instance, the work of radiologists, right? Radiologists, not the classical managers, but definitely those that are enabling at the end of the day or contributing to the achievement of an organizational goal, health of patients, right? And this is one of such contexts where also colleagues observed, to what extent do radiologists actually make better decisions in such augmented settings. There's other settings such as predictive policing, but just for you to give you a first idea or first feeling about this, where they're coming from, this is about very clearly delineated decision-making tasks and how AI actually helped us here, right? And then there's another group of scholars that comes from a very different angle, and this group has been summed up at what we called, or what is also called, algorithmic management, right? And there we basically have the entire flip side, right? We see that algorithmic management focuses on coercive employee control contexts, right? In which second party are constrained in their agency, accept or resist automated interactions, and thus experience personal impact. Academic language made just what does it actually mean? Well, very often those are cases where people are working in platforms, right? And this is not necessarily what academics are often exposed to, or let's say practitioners that are looking into management are exposed to, but it's about those platform workers that are actually in their onboarding, in their recruiting, in their day-to-day work, managed by an algorithm or managed by AI, right? And this comes from a very, very different school of thought here. This comes not from how can we overcome our biases. Here it's much more academics here go back to what we call labor process theory. That is always about this antagonism between the workers on the one hand and those who are exploiting the workers, right? And we've seen in this picture before that actually these two schools of thought have been brought forward in a relatively balanced way, meaning there's as many algorithmic management studies out there as there have been those that are looking into the human AI collaboration. And examples is here, how do actually people in platform organizations such as Upwork, such as Uber, actually comply or resist algorithmic control, right? That is a very, very different focus that they're bringing forward in that area. And we thought, wow, this is actually fascinating. There's a new emerging phenomenon. And, the research that we're looking into here has been published from 2018 onwards. So, and still we have already these two very, very, very different perspectives. So we identified these different tensions between the perspectives. And we saw, well, it's mainly about, okay, how do they describe the context? Is it about, an enabling decision-making context, or is it about platform work? They have very different assumptions about agency. So whether you can actually decide whether or not you accept a pre-written email or not, or whether you're actively managed by algorithm, where you have to drive next, which route to take, etc., etc. It's about very different assumptions in the interaction, and also at the end of the day, what we consider as an outcome. Now, and therefore, what I said, therefore, I think that already in this in this conceptualization of AI in management lies to an extent, okay, this paradox of success, because very often, and that is also what happens for researchers, they take an either or perspective here, right? Saying, okay, this is the perspective that works better, and discounting the other perspective. Now, we were doing here and taking much more of a paradoxical approach, saying, okay, why can we not just see that both sides provide actually some valuable points to an overall picture that is way more complex than, for instance, an individual decision-making context? Good. And what we did here is that basically we said, okay, in order to move this forward, we need to employ one thing which we call systems theory, or which is called systems theory in the literature. And that says that rather than going for an either-or view, so opting for one side, discounting the other, well, we should actually seek to explore the underlying intricacies between tensions, right? We should actually, rather than taking sides, exploring them and see, okay, what is actually the thing that connects them over time. And from this point of view, we can leverage these both sides, and we can move what we hope for beyond the micro level views. Good. I give you a couple of examples on the next slides, and then I will also allow for some time to discussion. But what we did in the remainder of this, and what we're advocating actually for. We said that, for instance, at the moment, we should move forward from a simple task view to an organizational context, right? This is also what Saeed has proposed in his view here forward, right? Does it really make sense to think about only some different tasks in which, for instance, executives have decision-making power in an enabling context, and in the other one, it's much more about managerial control in a very, very coercive context, in a way that you have a relatively restricted or limited agency to take a decision whether or not, right? And in order to do so and to observe the system view, we went back through all the different articles in our sample, and we looked for, okay, where is actually some links between them that we can find. And we found, by looking at this in such a way, we found actually quite some surprising things. For instance, we found that there's actually way more interaction across these contexts than one would have thought. For instance, I said before that one of the AIC contexts is in predictive policing, right? And in predictive policing, it's very often in these studies described, okay, how can police officers actually do a better job in predictive policing by means of AI? And then if you read between the lines, academics then put this normally in the limitations or towards the end of the papers. They also describe actually in one of the papers that studies Dutch predictive policing, they actually said that, well, police officers are actually focused by two different things. On the one hand, they use these predictive policing recommendations and then take the decisions on it. On the other hand, actually, their entire reactions are also surveilled, right? So we have much more than a surveillance logic of organizational compliance that takes place at the same time as the decision-making takes place, right? So we see this also when we take a closer look into the algorithmic management, that, for instance, organizations, they adapt their surveillance or their control techniques based on the behavior of drivers. Right. So actually, rather than someone just being controlled by a machine, there's also someone that is taking a decision-making task that has been overlooked. And taking it from there, we actually advocate, okay, rather than looking at these individual tasks that are all about decision making or about control, we need to consider the entire organizational context, which then also brings into the foreground different tasks that are relevant to management, which we didn't think about before. Good. I give you one more example, and then I think it's a good time to move forward to the discussion side. Otherwise, I'm cutting too much into that time, I think. The second example would be about the level of agency, right? Here it's on the one hand, those who increase even at times or retain their agency, and those who actually are fundamentally constrained by AI, or at least that is their perception about it, right? And for instance, as I just said in the example before, when in a platform company such as Uber, the company is reacting to people who are trying to avoid algorithmic surveillance and control, right? Then there's also decision making taking place on a managerial level, even though those drivers don't necessarily know the manager who's taking the decision. Right? So we say that there's actually these connected agencies that people have been forgetting about. Secondly, and this is also very interesting, I found, there are people who possess dual agencies. That means, for instance, let's stay with the platform examples. At Uber and related companies, they have individuals which they label or call rider captains for instance, in food delivery platforms. They are on the one hand riders, so getting all the information algorithmically, but on the other hand, they are also managing as captains those who are, for instance, newly joining an organization. And therefore, we make the claim that what we actually should look at here is that rather than looking in individuals and how they actually retain or lose their agency, well, we need to understand a bigger picture a little bit better about all these different humans and how they're interacting with AI and their social interconnectedness. Okay. I would stop my presentation here because otherwise I think that I'm cutting too much into discussion time and there may be too much information here. But I hope you found this interesting as an example, and obviously I'm very happy to share our work for those of you who would be interested.
Okay, I was going on there with the mute microphone. Thank you so much, Saeed. Thank you so much, Jonathan. I didn't see any direct questions in the chat, but the chat was very active with the different types of insights and thoughts. We have people here very orderly raising their hands. So let's start with you, Geraldo.
So much for the presentation, guys. I'm thinking this with the paradox of the tensions. Once I learned a framework on AI, I think it was from Professor Venkat Saeed, on where he called 3 A's, right? Automation being a first step, and then automation, augmentation, amplification. So in my view, I always thought of things being more like an evolution, where we start at a company at Ericsson, we had a decision to make. And the first thing we did was on automation, very basic things that could be automated and take away costs, because that would show good results at once, right? But then, as we learn and technology develops, then the concept of is actually humans and machines, is augmentation. And to be honest, I don't really recall what was meant with amplification. I would need to check on his book. So just your thoughts about that. Is it that, could it be more of an evolution as well, or how?
Jonathan, you want to go first because your time is more restricted than me, so again.
I think it's a good question, and I think it depends. So what we are making here as a case is that the role that it plays also in. So, okay, let's put it differently. It makes a difference in which kind of task we're talking about, right? Obviously, a lot of operational tasks have been automated. And those are tasks where AI plays a huge role. Those are not necessarily managerial tasks as such, right? And so there's a little bit of a difference between those different things. We have also seen this back and forth between automation and augmentation, and also the other way around, right? In some of the papers that we observed, for instance, we saw a transition between some tasks being, or some managers being, first of all, augmented in taking better decisions, and later on the tasks being automated, right? And we saw it also the other way around, that an automated task went terribly wrong. You know, just take things such as recruiting, onboarding, doing initial interviews. They went terribly wrong. And then the organization went back to augmentation, right? In order to fix these different biases that were built into these automated systems.
Yes.
So I think in an ideal world, imagine this as this step-by-step process.
Yeah.
But we also have some evidence that, you know,
it goes back.
It can also go vice versa.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Can I say just one line? So I think we have an evolution, but what I try to refer to is the process of erosion. So it looks like to me that our minds our capacities become eroded as especially the younger generation start to keep using AI. So that's, I think, a separate trajectory than the evolution, I think.
So thank you, Björn.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much. I found some insights that actually, and I participated in the discussion. But I had one very specific question actually, which I think we didn't point out, because sometimes I think we use the term AI too widely. And I think the first case, when you have this more support or discussion, it could be like summarized notes or whatever. I mean, that is where you use the LLMs, the large language models. But when you have the algorithmic steering, you're actually using more traditional machine learning to make sure that they make the correct decision. And there is no guesswork involved. It's more or less that's the answer. So I think one has to very clearly differentiate between these two types of AI. And the second type we have used for years. That's nothing new, and that keeps evolving. So I'm a little confused there, because one of them has more to control your data that you already have and make the right decision. And the other one is more to have maybe do some ideas and check the thing that you don't have the time to check, to be able to diverge. So I think it's more or less a thing about seniority or something like that, where some tasks are actually made much better with AI or machine learning, if I say so. Do you agree, or do you see that differentiation? Because I think that's how I interpret it.
Should I go first, Saeed?
Yeah, please.
So I think absolutely agreed with you. You know, I mean, there's a very natural phenomenon that when a topic becomes a bit more hyped, then everyone tends to use it. Interestingly enough, you know, when we then go back in the literature, so it comes from about, you know, we see it already since the 50s, something that is written about AI. And, you know, we cannot really point it to one specific technology nowadays, but, you know, we say, okay, it's about always these next generation advancements in computing. And then Yeah, then there definitely at the moment there's many people that refer about generative AI, but I think that absolutely we can distinguish between generative and predictive AI. And predictive AI, there it depends a little bit more how the learning behind it has actually changed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I think it's very it's very important, and absolutely agree.
Yeah, no, I mean, also in general I agree, but then when we talk about discretion, it's the loss of ability of individuals to understand when it's the time to overrule an automated decision. I think we have this old story that there was a Russian, a Soviet officer who kind of overruled the alarm for using the nuclear weapons, and that's why we could get away from a war at that point. I think we may get to a point that we don't understand how the algorithms work, and then there may be risks associated to that. So that's the point.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So, Ritza.
Yes, first of all, thank you very much. I really enjoyed listening to both interventions. And I have a couple of questions for both speakers. Saeed, you said that basically there is I mean, based on your research, there is more and more automation on the process that then allows, let's say, people working in organization not to take, let's say, their lead or innovative ideas, which is quite worrisome in the sense of the automation of the processes and in the fact that basically, you know, organizations are replacing already human workers with artificial intelligence, and you made some examples. So there I have two questions. The first one is, how are the companies accounting for the quantification of those artificial intelligence workers? Do they put a nominal value in their balance sheets or not? Because, you know, a real worker costs you money. And if you have artificial intelligence that is replacing the worker, have you looked at how this is being perceived from a financial aspect in a company? And you know, how then would this impact the reconversion of the workers? Because it is true that if a certain number of professions will go to disappear, this has also happened in the past. And, you know, so how do you see this going in the future? So this is one point. The second point is, how do you see this reflected in, let's say, more of the bureaucratic organization or in the administration? Because now there is an impact on the private sector. But how are governmental organizations going to be impacted on that? And yeah, so this is the first set of questions. The other one for Jonathan, you know, you have made a really extensive research, and you have made a difference between the way that we interrelate with artificial intelligence. Now, as an end user, and I work for the Commission, what is happening is that I see more and more colleagues using what they call chat GDP. Okay, so in this more simplistic way, I try to use it. And so at my level, I don't see that level of perfection unless I am using, even the Commission has been using a kind of chat GDP. So the system is good when you need, for example, to say, I have a document, I want to have a summary. So more or less, we have a summary that is perfect to a 50%, which is already good. But if you want to go and refine certain conceptual aspects, at least the system that we are using internally in the Commission, or I use the free platform of ChatGPT, that is not really the case. However, I also have colleagues that use they pay some fees to get the more advanced what it's called the chat GDP, and they tell me that in 10 minutes they can manage to do a work that would take a month if they would have had to do it manually, like the construction of a database set in Excel or things of the sort. So it is, how do you see this higher level of interaction, and in which way this level of interaction could better feed the decision-making process?
Thanks, Ritz. And I know that Jonathan, he's on his last minute here. Is always almost over time, I guess. But Jonathan, do you have time to reply?
Yeah, with pleasure. Then I start first. So thank you very much. So that are very good questions, and I will just, in the interest of time now, I'll pick some of it where I think I can provide some insights. So we often associate it with let's say ChatGPT or generative AI. But let's take a different example. I think your question pertains also to the question, okay, how does it affect white-collar jobs or higher-level white-collar jobs? And for instance, what was interesting to see, I had mentioned one of these studies where they were looking at the role of doctors in using AI in radiology, right? How they were actually doing this in order to take better decisions. And of course, this is a bit more of a closed context, but they take important decisions with regard to the health of the patients and what to do with them. Now, what the authors, and this is a paper that has already been published now 3 years ago, so that means that they did their research maybe 5 years ago or so, or 6. What they actually found out is that rather than people engaging in this augmentation process, in this reflection process, there's a good number of them that simply accept it all. And then somewhere at the end of the paper, they write that we set out actually to observe this augmentation phenomenon, but at the end of the day, and here what they wrote in the paper, which looks like augmentation on paper, is much closer to automation. So there are some of these tasks that are let's say involve a little bit more of routine, where this is already the case and has already happened to some extent. So that is actually interesting. With regard to ChatGPT now, just some of these insights is that I mean, it has only been around for about 3 years now. So what we can expect is definitely there are things that will definitely get better over time. There was an interesting study that was showing how, or actually several studies that we read through that were actually showing, okay, how does AI actually redefine the entire work of accountants, but also of lawyers, and so on and so forth. And it was actually having quite a lot of impact on them, and their work to an extent resembled much more technology heavy than before. So I hope that these were some useful insights to answer part of your very good questions. But I leave it there, and now I leave Saeed with the more difficult parts.
Thank you. Thanks, Rajan.
Jonathan,
I have to apologize.
you're leaving us.
I
Yeah.
have to leave.
Thank you so
very
much.
Thank you
Thank
for
you,
for
Jonathan.
participating. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Yes, Saeed.
Thanks. So just quickly, so I know for a fact that companies are thinking like that. So I was in California last year. I realized that in Google they're firing many people in expectation for AI effect. And in the Netherlands, Booking.com is laying off many layers of individuals, including those who are hired for AI projects, because they say that we want to make it future-proof. So my understanding is that they have a cost calculation that I don't know by heart. But the counterpoint or the question that we have here is that now suppose everyone is relied on AI as the core of the company. Eventually, this will be leveled out, so every company can use these similar types of AI. Then how would you compete? In other words, now I refer to the importance of tacit knowledge. It's by definition hard to codify. So even if you try to codify the existing knowledge of the organization through knowledge graphs and things like that, you probably miss something. Then if you get rid of various levels of individuals for efficiency gains, how would you compete in future? So that remains paradoxical to me and something that keeps my mind busy, but I don't have a concrete answer for that.
Thank you. Johan.
Yes, thank you. It might be a question, but there's also a criticism to the approach. So I hope I'm excused. But this is an academic reasoning, and we should criticize each other, I hope.
Definitely.
So this brings me back to sort of the problems of corporations, sort of, and actually this community has its legacy roots inside the corporation, sort of. So we are aware of that type of thing. And I argue that AI is not at the core of it's just an accelerator of something that is already ongoing, right? And what I believe is already ongoing is that I think you both were at the Department of Strategy and Management. And I think those are two horses, perhaps not the dead horses that you whip, but they are horses in an era where everyone is moving to cars or whatever the false analogy might be, because strategy and management builds on a legacy view and behavior of corporations, right? And there are many examples, I argue, that those two horses are failing to do enough work, right? Strategy doesn't work in a complex world because you don't, the causality breaks down, so you can't plan for something, and that's the core of strategy. And management is sort of the guardians of the strategy, almost, right? And if strategy doesn't work, management doesn't, as we know it, doesn't have a role. So you need to move a lot of the decision making that was discussed there to the edges of the organization. You need to empower the edges organization to do decisions, which is the opposite of decision making in the management layer that you brought forward here. And this change process started way before ChatGPT and other AI made sort of the public entry, sort of, and then took us all by storm. This happened like 10 years ago at least, and probably longer. And AI is accelerating that thing. And from that viewpoint, I think you can draw different type of conclusions. Is that a fair criticism, or is it?
No, I think it's quite relevant, because the assumption of what I presented is that there will be organizations the way we know them right now, and then within this organization we need to break the norm, so do things differently to defy, so to speak. But one likely scenario is that organizations will look very different in 10 years or 5 years, that I don't know. Then many of these things become less relevant, but in that case, we still need to think how innovation occurs So not by large organizations, which are eventually not that innovative, but by entrepreneurial firms, by individuals, by small firms. So there will be new dynamics. But then again, the question remains relevant. If everyone uses the same AI, and then people cannot really understand what AI is doing, how can we innovate as an entrepreneur, for example, or as a small firm? So, I mean, some of the questions will look differently, but still it remains relevant how individual autonomy and agency will remain relevant in the time of machines' dominance on our thinking and on our minds, basically.
Thank you. Geraldo, you wanted to go back to Saeed's presentation there.
Yeah, in the beginning of the presentation, Saeed, you brought up in one slide that one of the things AI can't do is belonging. That's a human capability. And I don't know if you've seen this movie, Her. It's one of very, So I loved that film when it came out, but some ways, I mean, we are starting to see this happening, right? I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, there was the first case of suicide, AI-induced suicide. So it was, I think it was an adolescent that used a lot AI bot, and then at the end, the AI bot says, go ahead and jump or whatever, as I understood, and so. What I believe, and then I don't have any data, is that one of aspects of the meta crisis, that's one of the things for the community, is mental health, is loneliness, and so. And I don't say that, and I agree with you that AI can't compete with humans in terms of belonging, but because of that fragility, there is an issue here, maybe, that AI, especially because interacting with AI, there is this confirmation bias, right? So I'm very worried about that, because I think that movie, sometimes Hollywood is very good in predicting stuff, right? So I just want to, I don't have the data, but I think maybe something to possibly look a little bit closer, just your view, or maybe I'm completely out in my thinking here.
I think I fully agree. I mean, many of the things that I was talking to my colleagues, many of the projects that we do, or the community that you created at Ericsson, or even this session that we have here, is not because of rational thinking that now this is the best way to use our time, but this is because of this need for connectedness and social interactions. But then many good things happen because of this way of thinking. Now, if we have less human interactions and more machine interactions, I think we will lose something, as you just explained. So I fully agree with
you. Dos?
Okay, thank you. That was quick. Right. No, I just thought I wanted to say something. I've been listening and it was all very, very interesting. Lots of terminology and structures that I'm not so familiar with. So, but one thing that I really found interesting was you were saying the diagrams you had. Well, in fact, the conclusions you have that AI may erode the social part and what was the other?
Mindfulness.
Yeah, mindfulness. Okay. So both these things are something I work with a lot in the small organizations that I usually work with. And yes, that seems really like a bad thing that AI is eroding this, because I think we need more of that in all corners of society and organizations. So yeah, this is just a reflection, and I think what I would like to see then in AI development is to really take care of that gap, so that AI will be used in a way, at least not eroding these two things, but perhaps even enhancing it. So the fact that you have seen that makes me aware that that is probably something I will always now, when I hear AI, ask myself, okay, does this really enhance social belonging and mindfulness, or does it harm it? So yeah, this is a thank you for that enlightenment. And yeah, if you have something to say about it, it's nice. But otherwise, I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Exactly. That's the practical point that we want to do with this conceptual work, that we need to think of these things. For example, as we practice with our muscles, now we can use cars and automated transportation, but still we practice and we exercise. So how can we get people to think and reflect without AI, even though if we predominantly use AI in our work? So that's the type of thinking, or the connectedness the same. So how we can get people to be connected, even though it is not necessarily needed for what we want to do today. So that's the type of thinking.
Yeah. Well, okay, that's a good parallel. Instead of when we take the car to the gym, we use the technology to train our muscles. So maybe we can find ways to use AI to faster get to mindfulness and social belonging aspects.
Exactly.
But on an end note here, maybe, and I don't want to end on a downer, but maybe it is, I don't know. But talking about paradoxes, AI seems to have so many, potential positive effects because we can automate a lot of stuff. We basically get unlimited cognition and intellectual support and capabilities. And maybe it's also a prerequisite for, someday maybe enter into this state, this fabled abundance epoch in human history. But also it seems to be so very easy to create systems here that are hyper efficient, but that are actually very, very inhuman, but they're there to sort of like govern us, just like the gig economy workers, for instance. And what's your take on this, Saeed? Are you optimistic or pessimistic about how we'll be able to design a future where sort of like AI will not become the ultimate unaccountability machine, where everything is decided through it, and there's no way really to, get any exceptions from it?
No, I think if we want to follow historical precedents, last 100 or 200 years, there has been movements that they were worried about technologies, and eventually we survived. Now this kind of industrialization, the digital technologies and everything, no one could argue that AI is quite different because it fundamentally replaces human. But still, I think there would be issues and challenges. Now, for example, with this digital transformation, we have more loneliness, this social media have some issues, but we are still benefiting from some of these technologies and surviving. In that sense, I'm optimistic, but in general, I'm an optimistic person. So maybe I prove to be wrong and AI will kill all of us. But I think it's something that we need to have this design thinking. So think of the future that we would like to have and work towards that instead of being worried about that. That's my thinking.
Yeah. So I'm not a Luddite, but I cannot help that. So thinking sometimes that the Amish people, they are onto something. Okay. Let's maybe end it there a little bit earlier, but I think that we don't have any more questions. Again, Saeed, thank you for your thoughtful answers to the thoughtful questions. And thank you also everyone else for showing up and joining us here this evening. And looking forward to meet you all again. We are continuing this series and aiming to do at least an event each month, I believe. But Geraldo, a last word from you, maybe.
No, just saying also that what is great is that, Saeed, we are part of for this community, so we can right away continue the conversations there.
Definitely.
Right? Which is
I was a bit
Really?
silent in the past month because I had an eye surgery, but at least now I can see very well. But I will become more active also with the new eye.
So we continue the conversations there as well.
Definitely.
Very
It-
good.
So it's not an AI.
No, it's normal.
It's a new eye. Yeah. But I wish everyone a great evening.
Yes. Thank you.
Like-
Thank
so
you.
much.
So
Thank you, Peter.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.